Hi, so this is the Racing Squared preview for the Breeze Up Sales 2023. So we're going to take a look at a couple of different analytical kind of angles to assess at looking sourcing 2-year-olds at the Breeze Ups across Europe. First Breeze Up sale starts at the Tats Craven sale on the 17th of April and runs through the spring up towards Akana. You could say in May, but they also do a bit of breezing at Akana in the summer as well. If you're watching on YouTube, if you could subscribe, that would be good. And same if you're listening on SoundCloud. Starts off, one thing that I typically look at is the strength of each individual sale. So where are the highest proportion of elite quality horses coming from? It's often how the sales companies are shaping and building the catalogs in their kind of pre-evaluations and pre-assessments of stock that's on offer, and also how consigners are placing their horses to kind of realize the maximum kind of financial gain from their investments as well. Use generally kind of certain types. I mean, probably the Royal Ascot types, you would probably be getting them out of Goffs, and say if you looked at Akana, you'd be getting maybe the classier middle distance types, and that's a generalization, not a hard and fast rule, but it probably does play out a little bit in the data. If we look at the table here, the breakdown, so if we look at what I would call the sales strength, which is the production ratio of each sale from lots that are offered or catalogued, and then what then happens in terms of performance outcomes on the track. And we've got it broke down there. So the lots that were catalogued, how many were sold, how many were passed in, how many reached the track and became runners, how many won, and how many run stakes races. I mean, you see there, I mean, Akana is generally the strongest sale in terms of kind of production ratio of stakes winners. So the 2018 Akana sale, 8% stakes winners, 2019, 10% stakes winners from the lots on offer coming out of that. I would generally say it's between Akana and the Tats Craven as the two strongest catalogues that are generally on offer. You see Tats Craven then occupying 2 of the other top 5 berths in the table there. I mean, Goresbridge had a really good sale in 2019, 7 stakes winners coming out of the catalogue in Ireland there. So generally, as a rule, I would say Tats Craven and Akana are the strongest catalogues, but if you look at the table, you can find good horses anywhere. Every single Breeze Up sales since 2018, there has been at least one stakes horse that has come out of it, so don't neglect the others. I made a fundamental mistake last year. I said before the Tats Guinea sale that I didn't think there'd be a 100+ horse came out of it. I was totally wrong. The Platinum Queen came out of it, and she was a Group 1 winner of the Prix de l'Abbé, and she was sold for a lot of money at the end of a 2-year-old season. I think also Crypto Force came out of that one as well, and he was a winner of the Beresford Stakes. So probably 2 of the best horses from the Breeze Up last year came out of the Tats Guinea sale, and I wrote it off before the sale, saying it wasn't going to be that good. So yeah, maybe interesting just to see the performance ratios there, but also you can find good horses anywhere, so that's why we try and look kind of through every catalogue in quite intense detail. Different thing about the Breeze Ups is, of course, we have horses that are kind of breezing down a 2 furlong kind of strip of ground, so times and how that gallop allows you to kind of gain a more detailed assessment of, say, potential athletic or performance potential, because you're seeing the horse actually gallop like in a racetrack environment rather than just, say, parading through a sales ring. So we'll take a look through the kind of how times have performed in the past, and what a lot of companies do, and companies offer it kind of commercially, and some kind of private companies do it as well, is set up different timing gates through the over the course of the breeze track at the kind of 2 furlong pole, at the 1 furlong pole, at the finish, and then kind of after, when the horses are galloping out as well, and take sectionals and take ranks of those times. What I would say about times is, I think they can be really useful in finding elite horses and good horses, but I also do think they're totally priced in and overpriced in the market at the moment. So you can find good horses if you're going to go via times, but I also think you've got to have a couple of 100,000 guineas, euros or pounds in your back pocket if you want to do your shopping that way. Here's a bit of a retrospective from the top times at the Tats Craven Breeze Up from 2022. Top ranked was Olivia Meralda, bought by Ammo, by Kodiak, offered by Tally Ho. 460,000 guineas, went on to get an RPR of 100. So, I mean, time kind of played out there, and potential was kind of realized on the track. Second top ranked, also bought by Ammo, Warbank, also by Kodiak, also from Tally Ho. 525,000 guineas, got an RPR of 102, so also it played out. Third horse, Annie Maher by Zoostar, Gabriel Lodge, 270,000 guineas, reached a performance level of 76 on RPRs. Probably not what you'd want if you'd paid that much, but the Zoostars do improve as 3-year-olds, as we see in the Southern Hemisphere, so can certainly have a performance upside this year as well. Lady Hollywood in the top 5, 58,000 guineas, and got an RPR of 102. So she was a real kind of value purchase there. But the main thing there is, if you look at the breakdown of times, you see that generally the top ones you're going to have to pay over 150,000 guineas for them, and you see that they do pull through in terms of decent performance. But as I mentioned, I think they're totally priced into the market at this point. I actually think more important than the individual ranks and positions on times, like first versus second versus third, I think it's more important to be in the upper quartile, so to be in the top 25% or the top 33%, because I think that's where the elite horses cluster, and your individual rank is all a little bit of a muchness. You can do a couple of different things. You can even look at the times and see where horses breezed on the track, like were they on the near side rail, were they on the far side rail, were they on the middle of the track, and like who was top ranked or who won almost their section or their lanes, if you want to call them that way. Sometimes different parts of the track are quicker than others, and that can, as in racing, and that can contribute to the times at the breeze up. So you can walk the track before, get an opinion on that, and kind of then do an adjustment based on the rankings of the times as they come through, based on where those horses breezed across the track. Just a different technique maybe to find a little bit of value. Similar thing, I mean, here's a breakdown of top lots from 2018 to 2020. So this is based on a historic study that I did. You see there, you can see the kind of official rating achieved by horses, where they then ranked on their first furlong, their second furlong, their gallop out, which is very informative, which we'll come to later on, their total rank of time, and then also using the times broken into percentiles. Were they in the kind of top kind of 90% on the first furlong, 75% first furlong, second furlong, gallop out, and also the total percentile. As mentioned, the percentiles seem to play out better in terms of predictive ability to identify future good horses. But you see a couple there. I mean, Trushan was top. I mean, he's a stayer, so he wasn't ever going to be top on times. I mean, he was only kind of in the 25th percentile on total time, but that again talks about the nature of the type of horse that he is, so you wouldn't have expected him to come out. But Ali, also kind of very highly rated, won at Royal Ascot, 113 rated, was very high on times, in the 90th percentile on all kind of sectionals, on the first furlong, second furlong, the gallop out, and also on total. Parents Prayer by Kingman came out of the Goresbridge 2019 sale. We were talking about a very strong one. It was only in the 50th percentile. Trot Bow was only in the 50th percentile. But you see it. I mean, generally, what I like to see is a consistent set of ranks, that they don't like oscillate between, like falling off a cliff between the different sectionals. And I would generally be looking in the kind of 75th percentile in terms of finding that the most of the elite horse will generally cluster there, unless you're potentially looking at stayers, and then you can almost make adjustments for the actual time that they'll pull in and just do it based on type. Here's a study on using that, looking at the ranks of horses, how they scored in their first furlong times, and then what happened in terms of subsequent official rating on the track, we find very little correlation overall between the individual ranks and then what happened in race kind of official rating returns. As you see there, if there was a really strong correlation, what you'd expect to see is that all of the top official ratings were all top on times. They're not. There's actually very little correlation across the entire population data set. That's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, things like the Trushan example, like not all of them are built in the way to top of the timing charts, but also I do think that like a 2 furlong strip of ground that may or may not suit horses that are at different stages of their maturity is not the definitive article on whether they're going to be a good horse or a bad horse. It's just one more kind of variable and data set that we can use. But you can see that there's horses there that have ranked quite low on times that have still come out and been 100 plus horses or been 90 plus horses. So you can get good horses from all over the place. That's how they started in the first furlong, and sometimes they start slowly and kind of gear them up into a smoother breeze. Same on the second furlong. We found that there is a higher correlation between the second furlong times and the rankings there and the subsequent official rating. Again, it's not high, but it's stronger than the first furlong. You get a bit more clustering. Horses are truly going then, truly galloping through the breeze, and thus that plays out a little bit more in kind of performance potential. But again, the distributions are quite all over the place. Gallop out, similar in terms of the overall distributions, but we'll look at percentiles in a little bit, which is informative. And the overall times, yeah, similar message. Like when you take all of the individual rankings of horses at Breeze Up Sales, you look at the times and then you correlate it with official ratings. You're not finding too much insight, to be honest with you. But what we do is when you break those ranks into percentiles, they do prove predictive. And I think that buyers should focus on the top 25% of horses on times, particularly, I would say, the gallop out time. And you get around £5 performance edge just by doing so. Here is the performance. I think that's the overall time by percentile. So the 90th percentile across all horses that were offered, they averaged a return on the gallop out time was the highest, or the rank of the gallop out time in the 90th percentile of an average official rating return of 69.2, and for the kind of the bottom percentile that was 59.53. So there is quite a difference there. Similar thing, you see quite a sharp drop off between the 90th percentile cluster of horses and the 75th percentile in terms of subsequent racetrack ratings achieved. Similar thing for winners to runners ratio. If you also use percentiles on the different kind of time ranks, again, gallop out performs the best, but if you use the 90th percentile of gallop out horses in the catalogue, 67% of them are winners that make the track, versus if you're in the bottom percentile, only 45.3% of them are winners that make the track. So there's a clear kind of predictive and performance edge within that. That's my main message is times are useful. You can find good horses. You saw it at the Craven, the top two were all 100 plus horses. They're very expensive. You have to pay hundreds of thousands of guineas or euros or pounds if you want to get to them, apart from Lady Hollywood, who was a good example. But from an analytical perspective, breaking times from the individual sectionals into quartiles is a very useful analytical technique that can help you summarize a shortlist. Top consigners. So we do stats on consigners. I've been tracking consigners back to 2018 from the lots that they offered, and then what's the same thing subsequently. How did those lots perform on track? Like how many did they offer? How many reached the racetrack and were runners? How many placed? How many were unplaced? How many won? How many were stakes winners? How many were group winners? The average stakes winners to lots offered across all catalogues was 2.67%, and the average group winners to lots offered across all catalogues was 1.6%. So any consignor that is punching above that level is doing really well. My top two consigners in that period, 2018 to 2022, and you can almost debate the toss a little bit about who's first or second, but Mark Grant, very good, 35 catalogued. and 3 of them became stakes winners and group winners. So I mean, he's got a 8.57% return on stakes winners to catalogued and an 8.57% return on group winners to lots catalogued. So I mean, he's punching well above that 2.67% and that 1.67%. Oak Tree Farm, that's Norman Williamson, who consigned Native Trail and Hekiki, who won the Lincoln back in 2021. He's really very good. He's a kind of supreme judge of equine stock. But I've got him on 51 catalogued, 6 stakes winners, 4 group winners. That's an 11.76% stakes winner return and a 7.84% group winner return to lots offered. You could put Oak Tree Farm and Norman Williamson top if you used stakes winner percent. So that's why I say it's a bit between the two. Houghton Bloodstock from Suffolk, I've got a 3 again, 11.67% of stakes winners to lots offered, less offerings, 17 and 2 stakes winners. It's more difficult. Then I've got Kingfield Stud, Churchview, the Ivies, Robson Aguilar, who is a supreme breezed up consigner. He's also I just have to tally ho, he's got the second highest number of catalogued lots there, but he's 128 lots offered, 6 stakes winners. So he's got 4.69% stakes winners to lots offered, which again is pretty much almost twice as good as the population average. He does a lot of pre-training, particularly for AMA racing out of Ireland. He also pre-trained one of our horses, Albert Lasker, for a little bit as well after the Goff's Island sale last year. So paid very close attention to stock there. Mr. Malcolm Bastard, very good. Been doing this for about 30 years. Tally Ho, offer a lot, 265, but get a lot of stakes winners. You saw it also from Warbank and Olivia Meralda. 2 very kind of high profile lots from the Craven Breeze last year, but I've got them at 17 stakes winners from 265 lots offered. That's a 6.42% conversion rate of stakes winners to lots offered. And Star Bloodstock, very good outfit and use a lot of analytical techniques. And Byron Rogers, who runs that with Matt Eves, taught me a lot of stuff. I've got them also on a high percentage, 83 lots offered and 4 stakes winners. That's 4.82% stakes winners to lots offered. But that's a snapshot of the top 10. There's more that are still above that population average. As I say, the population average across all vendors is 2.67%. But you can't go wrong if you're focusing on them 10, because they're good judges and they'll be bringing good stock to each of the sales. You might have seen it on Twitter, but we do a lot of work on biomechanics. And I'll just show a little video there. This is something that we've done from the Dubai Breeze Up. So we use a bit of software called Deep Lab Cut to do motion tracking of horses as they parade at sales, and in the context of breeze up sales, also how they breeze. So key body parts get a kind of tag and get a dot, and those markers generate a series of data points that we can use to then profile those horses and also analyze them against different variables that equate to kind of subsequent racetrack performance. As you see, like kind of key joints like the hocks, the knees, the fetlocks, the feet, shoulder, the hip, the ischium, the head, they've all been tagged, and they're generating a load of data about the trajectory of those body parts as the horses are moving, the angles of those joints as the horses are moving, what I call gait cycles, which is kind of the overall turnover as those joints as the horses are moving as well. We bring that all into a big database and we compare that against future ability and track outcomes and what ratings horses then subsequently achieved, and then which data points help find horses that achieve elite ratings. But we do that across all sales. Skip that one a little bit. So that was that one was an example of what we do on the Breeze when we're looking at the gallops. We also do it on parade videos as well. Again, looking at the kind of structural composition, the conformation of a horse as they parade, and again, these joint angles, gait cycles as well. I've got more samples on the walk analysis. That's about 5,000 samples now, and the breeze is it's about 1,500, but you have to split it in two, one breezing left to right and one breezing right to left. So I prefer the walk biomechanics at the moment, just because it's got a bigger data set, so it's more reliable in terms of predictive value. But what, maybe just to say a couple of words on that, what we find are the most important, if you look at the data that comes off those markers, there are 3 data points or 3 body parts or angles that are the most predictive in terms of future performance. So the first is the elbow. So at the top of the 4 legs, kind of the intersection of kind of the shoulder, the mid shoulder, the elbow going into the foreleg. I mean, for me, that's a little bit where stride length is coming from. So it's about reach, and that angle, and particularly the gait cycle of that marker is telling you, it's giving you equivalent data points that are kind of contributing to stride length. The second most predictive variable is the stifle. So that is, again, it's the joint at the top of the hind leg. That for me is kind of telling you a little bit about where power is coming from. So it's effectively summarizing the movement of the back end and the gait cycle of the back end, kind of going from the hind quarters, then in translation of the power into the legs. So a lot of locomotion and power and kind of thrust is coming from there, and a lot of the data points we take off that prove to be predictive in terms of future racetrack ability. And then the third most predictive data points are actually the hind fetlocks. And I think that's something to do with soundness. So your hind fetlocks are taking a lot of kind of pressure, or that's where the propulsion and where the locomotion is coming from. So if your hind fetlocks can't withstand that and can't kind of perform effectively, then that's not going to enable a horse to realize its performance potential. But hopefully that deconstructs a little bit the data that we're taking off those biomechanic marker videos and how it's used and how it contributes to subsequent performance. This is some example of live testing that we did on walk biomechanics across Europe, breeze ups last year. We have a machine learning algorithm that takes those videos you've just seen on the previous pages and then assigns them a score on whether it thinks they're an elite horse or a non-elite horse. Elite horses are horses that receive an official rating of 90 and above. Non-elite horses are horses that receive an official rating of 60 or below, and it gives them like a probability assignment or classification on percentage probability prediction that it's elite versus percentage probability prediction that it's not elite. This is how things played out from projected to actual ratings. Like we projected 5 horses with a 95%. Actually, this is runners. This and I'll show you the data actually in a second about all horses evaluated. But 5 runners that reached the track. 4 of them became 90 plus. That was an 80% conversion ratio. It was actually 9 horses in total. 4 of them haven't reached the track yet, so they're either later developing or they're injured or they just didn't make it. Then of runners, 15 that reached the track were predicted with 90% probability potential of being over 90. 8 made it. 23 runners were predicted with 80% probability of being 90 plus. 9 made it, etc., etc. So what you can see is that it is useful and informative in predicting or assigning a probability to a performance kind of potential or ceiling that a horse can have. You see that there is a relationship between the strength of the predictions and the kind of strength of the probability classification and then the subsequent track outcomes. I think it's about 12% horses in total that across the population go on to be a 90 plus horse. So that's the threshold you want to beat. You want to build something that is performing above a 12% return across the population, and you also want to beat that within kind of different prize bands as well. Here are some of the successes, and they weren't all successes. I will show it for fairness, but here are some that kind of played out. Acclamation Vassitas, that was Remarkable Force, was projected at 98, got to 91. El Kabir, Starlight Sienna, that's a filly, Bright Diamond, projected 98, became 98. Kodiak missed time. I think that's all the time. Projected 98, became 96, etc., etc. What I do observe is when you've got a really good human judge that agrees with the machine learning algorithm, you get really good returns. I was not involved in the purchase of any of these horses. This is all done by good judges themselves, but just to show how our algorithm scored them. Harry Angel White Rosa is Marshman, bought by Nick Bradley, who is a supreme equine judge, nothing to do with me. But our algorithm liked him, Nick Bradley liked him, and he's a really good horse. Came second in the Gimcrack. Here's then the full breakthrough of the top 20 lots across all Breeze Up Sales 2022 on Walk By Mechanics. See, the top one was Mason out of Oakley Star. That is Pocket the Packet. Now, Pocket the Packet might now be one of my favourite horses, but he wasn't at one point last year. So he was top on Biomechanics out of the Breeze Ups, and they ended up handicapping him to 45. I mean, he won, I think, 6 on the bounce or 6 in an unbroken sequence after the kind of his first 3 runs in maidens and novices. But it didn't help me at the time of the yearling sales when people would say, "Oh, so how did your scores from the Breeze Ups do? Who was the top one?" And the top one was rated 45 at that point. Thankfully, Pocket the Packet wasn't a 45 rated horse. I mean, he ended up running to an official rating of 85 or 84. So, I mean, he's not over that 90 threshold that we aim for, but at least he got a bit closer. So it's like less embarrassing. Remarkable Force, as mentioned, was up there quite high as well. Did reach the 90 threshold. And then 2 horses that haven't reached the track yet. Either because they haven't been ready, they need more time, or they got injured, or they weren't good enough in the end. There was a dandy man out of Wu Zetian called Little Wade, but I don't think he's run 15,000. I think went Scott Dixon, I'm not sure, but hasn't run. And also a Bated Breath out of My Wish, 63,000. I think went George Boy, but hasn't run either as well. So yeah, no ratings on them. And sometimes some horses that are catalogued and that also you rate won't make the track. So you should expect a little bit of kind of attrition there. El Kabir Starlight Sea, I know we mentioned Bright Diamond, and then you see some of the others all the time. Beautiful Aisling, Far Shot nearly achieved the rating. Shandy Star was just a bit short. King of Scotia is a Kessar out of Princess Rose for Michael Callahan's run to 87, but probably will get over the 90 threshold this season. Marshman, we've mentioned. Profitable Hungry Heart, that's Mama Heart, went to Italy and run a conditions race in Rome, so don't have a rating, but has run a fair level in Italy. So I mean, not all of it, you don't get it right all of the time, but the objective is to try and kind of have the probabilities on your side and do a decent enough job in evaluating horses that you can get a couple of little extra percent than perhaps the rest of the market. And I'm particularly proud of that, and I think we've kind of managed to do that there. But you're never going to get like all of the horses that you expect are going to be kind of achieving the levels that you expect. I mean, this is all before vetting and scoping as well. So some might have had vets and scope issues. Some might just get injured in the field. Some fundamentally might just not be good enough, but that's just how it is. If you found that interesting, you can contact me. I'm on Twitter at Tom Wilson Horses. I'm also on email, racingsquared@gmail.com. Racing Squared is my startup company. We are a horse racing analysis and performance company. And please subscribe if you watch the video on YouTube, and please subscribe if you listened to the recording on SoundCloud. But hopefully see you at the Breeze Up Sales, and hopefully that was a little bit of interest in preview ahead of that.